Earlier this summer, Sue Myers left a comment, a wonderful comment about memories of walking in the yard looking at flowers with people. And it reminded me of all the times that I would be with Granny and she'd say, come out here and let me show you this flower that's blooming. Or at one of my aunt's houses, or even my grandmother's houses. Flowers, of course, for men and women, are just one of the beautiful things of life. I remember one time the girls were playing music way up in the mountains, Cashiers, North Carolina, almost to Cashiers, and it was at a house, a little old lady's house, and they were playing music on the porch. We never went inside the house, but all along the edge of her yard, of course, was flowers, but all around the edge of her porch on the banisters, she had like coffee cans and Tupperware, like think butter bowls, country crock, those kind of things. She had all those filled with flowers. She'd made flower pots out of them, and it was just one of the prettiest things. So I love to walk around and look at my yard and look at the flowers, like Granny and my aunts. My aunts, I would do the same thing, go to their house, and they'd say, well, let's look around and look at the flowers, and I'll see if there's a piece you want to take home with you. They would always share. But after Sue left that comment, I thought, well, I'm going to do that. I'm going to walk around with everyone and show them my flowers, and kind of in memory of all the wonderful folks that did that with me. And then I just never did do it. I never got around to it. So I was thinking about it this week and thinking, Tipper, you better hurry up or the flowers are going to be gone, because we've had a touch of fall in the air this week. I know we'll have some more warm weather, but it's been, I think yesterday morning was in the upper 50s, so it's definitely been a drastic change, even though I know that heat will come back. So today I want to walk around with you and show you the flowers that are blooming now. Of course, some of them have already quit blooming. These right here, this is back here by the chicken lots right behind you in our greenhouse. These are some yellow zinnias that I planted last year. I planted them in a grow bag here at the end of the greenhouse. And every time I come out to feed the chickens, I have to walk right by them to get the chicken feed. Or was in this part of this bed right here is where our tomatoes, our Cherokee purples are. I would notice them, and they were so pretty. Well, this year, that last grow bag, we put potatoes in, so I didn't put the flowers in it, and I thought, well, I'll miss them. But thankfully, they had, I guess where I'd had them last year, they'd kind of fell over, and then they reseeded themselves right here in the edge of the tomato bed. So I've still got to enjoy them, and they're just lovely. Such a pretty color, like this one's a little bit bigger, kind of the pom-pom variety of zinnias, but they're so bright and so lovely. So I've really enjoyed them being back here this year. So I have showed you this flower in several videos. This is one of my nasturtiums that I planted back here. You can see the bloom. This is like a peach colored with little orange streaks. So pretty. So I've really enjoyed them. They're such a pretty plant. Next year, I plant them every year, but next year they've done so well back here, I'm going to make sure that I put one at the end of each bed. Here's some more nasturtiums back here. These are, you can see these are more dying out down there, but the top, they kind of died out on the bottom, and then they started coming back out on top. Those are like yellow and orange. They've been really pretty. And of course, they're right in the edge of the bed with the peppers and the watermelon. The cantaloupes are all gone. You can see some of my watermelons there. The peppers are still going strong. And right here beside them in our herb bed is some flowers. This is yarrow. So it's really pretty. It bloomed out, and it grew so tall that it fell over, just like this is done. And I cut it all back, and then it's come back out again, and it's blooming again. So it's really pretty. Of course, the plants have pretty blooms too. You know, all plants bloom some kind of little bloom. You can see right here a pretty little ground cherry bloom. That ground cherry just come up there, but it even has a really pretty little bloom on it. So this bloom looks kind of pitiful, doesn't it? I'm barely hanging on. Although I did see a hummingbird getting some nectar from it the other day. But this is actually a plant that Katie just brought in, I don't know, about 3 weeks ago or something. And it's a wild bee balm. It'll be really pretty here if it doesn't take over. But it is living. It just kind of looks pitiful. It was already blooming when she brought it in. But next year it should be really pretty if it reseeds itself. It may overtake this bed though. We may have to move it, but at least she got it to live after bringing it home. So back here behind the greenhouse, I didn't plant any flowers back here, so this is like a surprise bloom. This was where we started our new bed for our winter squash. First time we've planted anything back here, and we used compost. So the compost had some sunflower seeds in it. So I've had a wonderful little, just one little stalk, but beautiful sunflowers back here, kind of a surprise bloom. So this little bed right here, there used to be a oil tank here, and you can kind of see the discoloration on the side of the house. That's where the oil tank was. We're going to stain our house hopefully in the next few weeks, so that will look better after that. Anyway, but after it was gone, I already had kind of flowers in front of it. You can see the mess over here to this side. That's a lot of hostas, and then also irises kind of all grow together, which definitely needs to be cleaned out. But these, in the other end of it, once the barrel was gone, I thought, well, that'd be a lovely place for flowers. I could have a whole flower bed there. Now the evening sun really beams down right here, and then it kind of radiates back from the house. So what I've discovered is it's not really, it has to be a certain kind of flower. All the ones that I planted kind of died out really quickly. It was just way too hot for them. But the ones that love it, of course the hostas and the irises, they don't care. But it's that pink anemone. They've been growing there for, I don't know, I mean years, probably 15 years. But I only had one little clump of them. Since we moved that barrel, they have just kind of spread and took over. So they really love the heat, and they are so pretty. And then they're such a wonderful flower because they don't bloom till late, you know, till this time of the year. So it's like you've got something to look forward to. Now these hostas that are blooming, most hostas have kind of that purple flower. And these are different. This is like, Granny calls this one a lily, even though it is a hosta. But it does have a nice fragrance, a really nice fragrance. And these are kind of looking worse for wear. The bees are going crazy over them. But you can see kind of, it does kind of look like a lily, more like a lily, but it has a really nice fragrance. And so they are a later blooming hosta than those purple ones that have already bloomed. They've quit blooming and went to seed. Now this is the anemone. I think they're so lovely. And here's some flowers. I did plant some zinnias, but they just didn't do very good. Now the bees are really working on the anemones. There was a little Cosmo. When we went to the nursery, Corey and I, we bought some different things, and I planted them in here, and they pretty much almost died, and I moved them to another area, and they're still looking really pitiful. But the one that did love it back here was this one. It's like a lamb's ear with a pink bloom. Now it didn't bloom, but it has really growed. So again, it loves that it gets that heat, even though it radiates back from the house. So this little patch of zinnias here, they're just beyond just this side of the irises and the anemones and the hostas there. And I planted them because I had a little bare space here, and I thought, well, that would be really pretty there. I moved out my flower rocks here and made a little bit more of a flower bed. And it took them all summer to finally grow and start blooming. I've had zinnias in other parts of the yard blooming for a long time, and these have just now started, like in the last week or two. But they're really pretty, you can see. I have a little bit more extra space down there, so next year I need to make sure to plant more. Maybe plant them earlier might help too. But this has been a really nice little bright spot just at the corner of the house here. So along this side of the house, these hostas, these are a miniature variety. You can see they go all the way up through there. And they bloom just kind of the purple bloom that most hostas do. Kind of a little smaller, of course, because they're miniature. But they've finished blooming. It's been a good long while, and once they finish, I go ahead and cut them back. But you can see, because it's the end of the summer, they're beginning to look rather raggedy. So this flower bed starts right under my window with those giant hostas. Again, they're through blooming, kind of starting to look raggedy. Right behind them is a beautiful pink peony that's of course finished blooming. There's some wildflowers, some little sweet williams down there, and some wildflowers. And then my hollyhocks have died back. Those will be the ones that bloom next year. And then as you look on down through the bed, you can see here's some marigolds just coming on. There's some dianthus that's through blooming. Well, Sweet Williams is actually dianthus too, and there's the hollyhocks, which will be next year. And then this was a Cosmo that's kind of quit blooming. I need to deadhead it, and maybe it'll come back out. And then I have a lot of zinnias here, a whole big patch of them. Old maids, zinnias, whatever you call them. They're so pretty. At the very front of the bed, I planted nasturtiums. And while I planted them about the same time I did those in the back, it took them a long time to actually start blooming this year. So I need to definitely try to get them even earlier. But now that they are blooming, you can see they're doing really great. And from my anemones in the back, I started some up here. I don't remember if that was last year or the year before, but you can see they've really spread, and they're doing great. They're so pretty. And it is neat that they bloom this time of the year because things are beginning to die back. And I think this variety is actually called September Charm. So hard to believe, but it'll only be about another week and September will be here. I had some bachelor buttons over there in the back too. And those tall, I'm not even sure what kind of flower that is. It's like a type of wildflower. Some type of aster probably needs to be cut back. It's definitely quit blooming. Now, if you're a reader of The Blind Pig and the Acorn, you'll remember that over there under my kitchen window, right in the middle of those hostas, that one time I had a fairy tale that lived there. And it was really an interesting thing. And when I had to finally, I'll have to tell you the story about it someday. It was like I noticed it, and I hoped nobody else didn't notice it, and I was going to leave it and let it grow. And Granny and Matt both said, you know, you can't leave that there. You can't let that grow. I was like, I know. And then Granny was up here and she seen it and she said, you better get rid of that. You can't leave that there. I said, I know. But knowing on the inside, I had no intention, no notion of getting rid of it. I was going to leave it. Well, I left it and I watched it and I was amazed by how it grew and how it got larger. And how it climbed up the wall, and how until one day when I bleary-eyed, how you do in the morning, went into the kitchen to get started that morning, noticed that something looked funny, and that's when I finally realized it's because my fairy tale was looking in the window at me. So I finally did have to get rid of it. I'll link to that whole story below so that you can go read it. And a lot of people told me, well, you can't get rid of it. It'll come back. You'll never get rid of it. But I did. Once I cut it down, it died and it never come back. And it never started anywhere else. And kind of the story, which you can read on The Blind Pig and the Acorn, the full story was that seemed like it was, after I investigated to try to find out where it come from, it was like one of my long lost great uncles had come to visit me, and it was like it was him telling me, Tipper, I'm going to knock on your kitchen window because I'm going to live outside it for a little bit, and you go find out more about me and ask your pap about me. And I even ended up with a picture of him, so it was a great journey. It was a great story. That's a real tease, I know, but I wrote it much better than I can tell it, so I will link to that, and you can go read it for sure on The Blind Pig and the Acorn about my fairy tale, and you can even see it. I took pictures. Over here on the bank behind me, of course, is all grown up with all kinds of stuff. But where I've thrown stuff over the years, I even have blooms over there that'll peek out at me. Right now I can see, I'll pick up one, which is monkey grass. My aunt, those aunts that give me so many flowers, they also give me advice that I did not listen to. One aunt told me, you don't plant that, Tipper. You'll be sorry. You'll be wanting to get rid of it someday. I said, well, I don't have anything, so I want something. Well, she was right. I wish I'd never planted it. But it does have a pretty little bloom, and it does stay pretty and green if you keep it cut back and let it come back. But if you're trying to grow other stuff around it, it's really, really a pain sometimes. So earlier this year though, so this bank behind us, this is something that we have to continuously battle. We have to cut it back and it grows back, and we cut it back and it grows back. It's just an ongoing battle. And you say, well, why do you cut it? Why don't just leave it? Well, eventually it would come right on out and take over our yard and our house and all that. So you kind of have to keep it beat back. And the trees, as you can see, that one right there is now larger than, I mean, it's, I don't know, 20 feet tall. And we cut it all back. Not this summer, but last summer. Maybe it was the summer before. Anyway, it's not been long, so that's something, another thing that has to be done pretty quick. But earlier this spring, before all the green was out, I was walking through here and I seen some white, and I thought, what in the world is that? So I climbed up the bank. It was a snowball bush. Like, I guess I planted it there maybe forever ago and have no memory of it. Maybe when the bank was clear, and I thought, well, that'd be good and it'll grow up and it won't be overtook. And it had like maybe 4 blooms on it. It was no bigger than that. But I just forgot, I guess. Maybe I planted it there years ago. But it was there, it was, blooming. And now that summer is here and the jungle it's completely covered it over. If you can hear the noise in the background, that's our neighbors are having some work done, so someone's grading. That's the machinery that you hear. Often in my videos you hear noise. It's Katie in the basement working, but that's not her today. If you're a regular viewer of my videos, you'll remember that early this spring I brought back a flower from up the creek and was hoping it would bloom, and I figured it was a daylily. Well, that's it right there. So it's living, but it did not bloom this year. So hopefully next year it will. And I'm still pretty positive it's a daylily. And I'm betting it's the orange variety that's very, very common. Some people call them flags. I don't know, is it irises they call flags? I don't know. Anyway, it did live, it just did not bloom. Over here near the wood pile, I used to have a flower bed. You can see the rocks there. That's still, all my beds are outlined by rocks. And I really kept it neat and nice. It goes all the way back through the woods, back through there. And it was full of really beautiful things. And over the years, I totally abandoned it. I just let it go. You can see there's still irises here. There's some blackberries that's infiltrated, a lot of weeds. I cut it back earlier this year. There's a horrible vine. But amidst all that, in the spring, there's lots of daffodils that bloom over here, so that's still nice. You can see that's a beautiful hosta there. That's kind of like one of those bluey green colored ones, really beautiful and pretty. Look how big it is. And then the only thing blooming though right now, you can see it's surrounded by the laurels and the ivies. There's a laurel and there's an ivy right beside each other, which makes it even more difficult and our habit of calling them by the wrong names even more confusing. The little leaf is the ivy and the large leaf is the laurel in mountain speak. But it was months and months ago when they bloomed. So the only thing blooming right now, you can see right over here, is the red. So that is, I don't know the exact name for it, but that's like a surprise lily. That's one that doesn't really, you don't notice it, and there's a pink variety too. Some people call the pink one the naked lady, surprise lily, resurrection lilies, all different names. But you don't notice them having a leaf or anything, and then all of a sudden, overnight, there's the bloom, there's the flower, and it's just lovely. And it's a later blooming one too, since this is the end of August. But so I have no memory of putting them over there, but I'm sure I did years ago. And so that's a pleasant little surprise to see. So this area of the yard's where the majority of my flowers are. You can see I have some real work that needs to be done as far as weeding them and cutting back. My phlox is about done. You can see one or two little blooms still hanging on. It's a beautiful plant, just a wild plant that grows. A lot of the things like the geraniums and things like that were blooming down here, of course, have already quit blooming. A lot of this is Agiratum. It's like a purple bloom, and again, it's a fall bloom. It won't bloom until fall. Another bloom that I have down here, can't remember exactly what the name of it is, but it's a yellow bloom, and it just pretty much will take over if you let it. But again, it's an late May, early June bloom, and then it's gone. The zinnias down here, though, are especially pretty. This one's about taller than I am. Back here in the back, there's some more of the surprise lilies. A lot of weeds. I see some vetch that needs to be got out, some little phlox. And here's some wildflowers kind of encroaching on my garden again, and this is called ironweed. It's so pretty. In the fall of the year, it blooms. It's when it's blooming. You can see there's some over there. And you can see some joe pie weed, or queen of the meadow. I heard Justin Metcalf the other day, he calls it queen of the medder. Queen of the medder. You can see it blooming back there. But the ironweed, it kind of, I always think of it kind of like a purple robe of fall, because it's, I don't know why I attribute garments to nature, but the roads and fields and stuff around here take on this purple hue from the ironweed, and it's like fall of the years put on its robe of purple before those beautiful oranges and reds and yellows of the trees come about. Again, the front side of our house, that bank, also has to be cut back a lot, and you can see how it grows like that in one summer. It's not that we've not cut it back, but we sure need to. There's some more of the surprise lilies right beside our beans and okra, squash, zucchini, and our turnips are just coming up. So this is the flower bed under the porch here, which has got a lot of weeds in it, so you'll see some weeds, but hostas that definitely need to be divided. Most of these have all done and bloomed, like the Lenten roses. They'll bloom. They'll be the first thing blooming again, because they'll bloom December or January. And someone, kind subscriber, sent me some, so I have one in that little pot there that's living that I hope is a different color than mine. More geraniums. A lot of this stuff, like I said, has already bloomed and dying back. More hostas, more geraniums. This is the first year in a long time that I have impatiens in here. When Corey and I went to the wonderful nursery over in Robbinsville earlier this year, I seen some impatiens and I got some. I used to have impatiens under here before the hostas kind of took over. And every year they would reseed themselves and they would come back. So I was hoping that I could get that started again, but until I do something with my massive array of hostas, I don't think that's going to happen. Another thing I planted this year, of course, is not bloomed yet, but those are foxgloves. I actually grew foxgloves if I managed to get them overwintered and they survive and come back next year. But no blooms, but they're really pretty, the leaves are. So maybe I'll have foxgloves next year. So this is a good example of the surprise lilies there. You can see there's no foliage, just the beautiful red lily that just pops up seemingly overnight. I have a pink variety too that looks slightly different, but they've I only seen one pink one this year, and it's already finished blooming and kind of died back. But you'll have to tell me if you know about them. Do you call them surprise lilies? Do you call them resurrection lilies or naked ladies, like I've heard them called that too? They're really pretty though, and I bet they come in other colors besides the red and the pink, but I'm not sure. So I hope you enjoyed walking around the yard looking at the flowers with me. It's something I've really studied on since Sue left that comment, thinking about all the wonderful women in my life who took me around their yards and showed me things and shared with me, and that's where a lot of my flowers come from. It's just really brought joy to my heart to think on that and to study on it, ponder on it. Earlier this summer, I was down at Granny's and she wanted to go out. I stay with her once a week, and she wanted to go out and look at something in the yard, and so I had to help her, and we were walking around the back side of the house, and I was just thinking, oh my goodness, it's so overgrown. It's so overgrown, and she can't take care of it now. I'm busy, you know, I can barely, like I was talking about, we can barely keep ours beat back on all sides of the house. And I was just feeling guilty about it and thinking about how bad it was and how horrible it looked because it was just so overgrown. And then she started pointing out this, look how pretty that is, and look at this one, and look at that. And you know, she saw the beauty where I was just seeing all the work that needed to be done. But she was actually, you know, the saying, she was actually stopping to smell the roses. She was actually paying attention to the beauty and not worrying about all the stuff that needed to be done. She was just proud of those beautiful flowers that she planted so many years ago. And I was really touched by that. I was like, all I could think about was in my mind going 100 miles an hour about how bad it looked and how it all needed to be done, this and this needed to be done, that needed to be done, but who was going to do it? And we don't have time, none of us do, and worrying about it. But she was seeing the beauty. She was just seeing all the beauty shine through that. For many years, I grew flowers, especially when we first moved here. We didn't have very much room as far as growing stuff. I still helped Granny and Pap in their big garden every year with vegetables. And so I just focused on flowers, and all those aunts, like I was saying, shared with me, and it was wonderful. And I would, you know, get them at the clearance rack at Walmart or wherever I could. And I just really was crazy about flowers. Well, at some point, probably about the time that we had the regrading work done, but really even before that, kind of a switch turned in my mind, and I thought, well, I'm doing all this work for these flowers, and they are beautiful, but I need to be worrying about feeding my family. So I kind of totally forgot about my flowers and started worrying about growing food. And so that's what I did. That's kind of the flower bed that I showed you down that I'd forgotten about. That's kind of when that I just forgot about it because I was too busy planting food and worrying about other things. And then, I don't know, maybe it was during 2020, I started thinking about, well, you could do both. You could have beauty, like the nasturtiums that I've planted at the edge of the bed, like this beautiful zinnia that's planted here at the edge of the tomato bed. And I thought you could do both. You could do both. You don't have to do one or the other. You know, yes, you need to grow food, but you could also think about the beauty. So I really, the last 2 years, made a real conscious effort to do that. Next year, I want to do that even more. I've already got plans in my mind of what I want to do for next year's garden and how I want to do the flowers. And now that I know the nasturtiums, the ones that I kind of took a chance on back here and planted really, really early, I'm sure it frosted after I planted them, I'm going to do that again and hope it works the same way. Maybe it won't, but it might. But I'm really going to try to look at that even more like I have the past 2 years, but continue that train of thought that along with the hard work, like the work I was seeing at Granny's that needed to be done, I need to make sure that I look for the beauty too. And planting flowers is a wonderful way to be able to look at the beauty and to be reminded of it, whether it's just the beautiful bloom like this, or if you see the bumblebees and the bees and the other little bugs working it and the butterflies. It just brings so much joy to my heart. I hope that you enjoyed it, and I hope, as always, that you'll continue to just drop back by to help me celebrate Appalachia, which is a whole lot of gardening, of putting up food, those kind of things, but also, I believe, looking for the beauty in everyday things.